I guess I'm bad at math or bad at science, right? Because of this grade that I got. And then I guess middle school rolls around. I had some pretty nerdy friends. One of them was like, hey, I'm going to do this thing called Science Olympiad. It's an after school program. And I was like, I'm not really good at science, but, I like the teacher who's running it and my friend's going to do it. So I was like, okay, let me just try this thing out. And then I end up competing in these competitions on pretty like technical topics. And I realized, hey, maybe I'm not actually that bad at science.
You're listening to Cultureful, where strangers become neighbors. I'm your host, Jess Lynn. Today, I'm sharing the second half of my conversation with Willy. In part one, we talked about the Japanese occupation and the aftermath of the Korean War that his family lived through. We also learned about his childhood in an active Korean American community. In this episode, through Willy's experiences, we dive into hallmarks of the South Korean education system and learn about immigrant children's cultural brokering for parents. We hear about the pivotal moment in Willy's childhood that got him into STEM, where he'd eventually build his career. His story shows us that sometimes the most consequential learning happens outside the classroom, and how we see ourselves as children, shaped by external feedback, can really change the course of our lives. As always, the video version is on YouTube. Here is the second half of my conversation with Willy. Welcome back from the break.
I got my nice little energy drink.
Cool. Okay. I want to get into how you went back and forth from the US to Korea in the summers when you were a kid. Tell me about that time.
So this is definitely my mom's idea, but she wanted me to essentially do these summers in Korea because the thing about like Korean education is that their summers are super short compared to the US, like the summer breaks, right? Because in the US, the summer breaks for school is super long and the winter breaks are quite short. In Korea, it's flipped. And so while I had my summer break in the US, my mom was probably thinking, oh, look at all this time he's not in school. Wouldn't it be a great idea if he went to school in Korea? That's probably what's going through her mind.
Because she wanted you to learn more stuff?
Because in her philosophy was just like, keep me busy, right? I think.
Well, also, if you were like, you said you were kind of like hyperactive, like maybe you just needed a lot of action too.
Yeah, just I think things to be doing, right? And ways to kind of outlet that energy. Also, in my mom's mind, it's probably, oh, he's going to learn Korean, right? So
yeah,
like that's probably the other really big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really fortunate to be able to even do this because I had family in Korea. So I was essentially staying with my aunt on my mom's side for the summers. And
in Seoul?
This is technically Seoul, but it's like on the outskirts. The actual city is Songtan, which is actually like, it's like maybe an hour train ride to like the middle of Seoul, maybe a little less. It's not too bad. And Seoul is really big. And so that's actually where my parents or my mom's side family grew up, in that area. While I was there, my mom was also able to kind of like point out things that she knew from her childhood, which was kind of interesting.
So she would go with you.
Right. So, because my mom also wasn't working, right? So in a sense, my mom also got to come along and.
Maybe she also wanted to be in Korea every summer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely some selfish reasons too.
Okay. So take me through. So then you guys would go, you and your mom would go, and your dad would stay in the US and he would work, and you would go and stay with your mom's sister for like 2 months, for 3 months. Like, how does this work? And how does just like, you can just enroll a kid in a school there?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think about now, right? But somehow, some way it works. And I think my mom, I remember this clearly, like after my 3rd grade summer, we would just walk to the school. I would show up with my mom, go to the principal's office and be like, hey, I'm from America. Can we have my kid go to your school?
Public school,
right? This is a public Korean school. And somehow it was fine. And so I would just start going, every morning like a normal kid. It was a really weird thing that I think I was very fortunate to be able to have.
So this is also fascinating to me because you just like show up in the middle of like whatever they're learning, and then were you like, uh-oh, what are they talking about? Like, or was it kind of close enough to the content that you were that you were learning in school that like, did you feel behind? Did you feel ahead? Like, do you remember any of those feelings? Or did you like not really worry about it because you're like, I'm only here for a few months?
So I think when it comes to like my experience there, obviously my grades didn't matter as much as it did for the other kids, right?
Yeah.
Because education is a huge focus in Korea where your grades kind of determine, it's not just grades, right? But it's a lot of it comes down to that test that a lot of Koreans have to, pretty much every Korean student needs to take.
The Suneung, officially known as the College Scholastic Ability Test, or CSAT, is Korea's high-stakes national university entrance exam, held annually on the third Thursday of November. This grueling 8-hour marathon serves as the ultimate gatekeeper for a student's future, as it is widely seen as the primary factor determining university placement, career trajectory, and even future social standing. The cultural weight of the Suneung is so immense that the entire nation effectively comes to a standstill to accommodate test takers. Flights are grounded and military exercises are paused to ensure total silence during the English listening portion, while the stock market and banks open an hour late to clear traffic for students. Over 10,000 police officers are often deployed to manage traffic and provide motorcycle escorts for students running late, reflecting a national all-or-nothing event where years of intense preparation culminate in a single life-altering day.
And so basically their life is almost, it's really kind of disheartening to hear about these now, but like, I mean, grades and education is a huge focus in Korea. And I think seeing kids there also just grind out every day, like it's not just school, right? For these kids, a lot of times it's all the after school programs, and like your whole life is just like education for like your first 18 years. I did get a little glimpse of that reality when I was there, right? Because my peers, and actually my mom would also put me in these after school programs.
Oh, so you had to do like the whole thing.
The whole Hagwon experience, right? So that's what they call it in Korea, is Hagwons. So it's basically after school program. And so I got to do the fun stuff like art Hagwon and computer Hagwon and like taekwondo Hagwon. But like I know that the other kids that my peers they were taking like English Hagwon, right? And like writing Hagwon and like science, like they were doing the technical stuff, right?
Yeah. A Hagwon is a for-profit private academy that serves as the shadow backbone of the South Korean education system. While they cover everything from art to taekwondo, academic Hagwons, like for math or English, are the most intense. The cycle begins early. Many children start attending English kindergartens as toddlers, and by elementary school, the grind is in full swing, lasting until the end of high school. Most students attend regular school until 4 p.m. and then study at these academies until a government-mandated 10 p.m. curfew. This is a legal restriction on the businesses to prevent sleep deprivation, not a curfew for the students themselves, who often move to 24-hour study cafes immediately afterwards. Because Hagwons often teach the curriculum months in advance, students who don't attend frequently fall behind in public school, where teachers may move faster, assuming everyone has already pre-studied the material. This creates a high-pressure cycle where Hagwons are a perceived necessity for survival. It is also a massive financial burden. The average family spends 20 to 30% of their total income on tuition, with some in high-pressure districts spending over half their earnings just to keep their children competitive.
And I know that the reality is actually some of them, like including my cousin, actually, who I heard a story, like he would get home at like 11 p.m.
Whoa.
Like, and I'm like, what? That's a huge cultural difference, I think, between the US and Korea, is just the level of focus for education and the amount of resources that, families are willing to put in to make sure that their kid doesn't lag behind, right? Because of the competitive nature of not just the country, but just the education system and in ways to get ahead, right? And so definitely a culture shock. Actually, going back to your original question, did I feel behind? I mean, Korean, obviously, I definitely felt behind. English, I didn't feel behind, and the math, also was fine because math is mostly symbols, right? You don't need words
Right.
really. So math was great. It was really the Korean based classes or the history classes that are heavy in Korean. Oh,
That were like hard.
and you also have to learn Hanmun.
Hanmun refers to classical Chinese, the written literary language used historically in Korea from the 4th century until the late 19th century. For over 1,000 years before the widespread use of Hangul, the native phonetic alphabet created in 1443 to increase literacy, Hanmun was the primary language of the government, philosophy, and elite literature. In the modern South Korean school system, Hanmun is an elective subject in middle and high schools. Though not a required core subject in elementary schools, 20 to 30 years ago, many schools integrated it into the daily schedule via discretionary or creative activity hours, making it a standard classroom experience for most students. Students don't just memorize characters, they learn to decipher classical texts and Sino-Korean idioms. The goal isn't to speak modern Mandarin, but to give students the keys to unlock their own history, as roughly 60% of Korean vocabulary is derived from these roots.
Which is basically like Chinese characters, right? But like the Korean versions of it.
Hanwon. Oh, it sounds like Hagwon.
Yeah, so
Chinese is Hagwon. Yeah.
Yeah. So
like
it's basically Chinese characters, right? And so because Korean language is actually based on these Chinese roots, a lot of the words, and so you end up learning also a little bit of like Chinese characters. So that was actually kind of interesting, and there was like a whole like. I don't know if it's still popular now, but there was like this comic book series that would help kids like learn Hanmun, and I really got into that at the time.
Did you learn the abacus too?
I don't.
Was that a thing?
That's the calculator thing?
Yeah.
No.
So just like...
Oh, the foods. Can I actually mention
Korean
food? Korean food also in the schools there, completely different than the US. Like,
different than the US, yeah. Was it like church food?
Basically, right? It's the whole spread. You get a little bit of everything, you know, all your veggies, every color. You get your soup on the side, your protein. It's really quite tragic what's happened to American lunches. Because if you knew how good it can be, yeah.
Okay, so lunch was like a thing you looked forward to there. So that's consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So then you just like, you came in and out, and then you would just like learn these like snippets of a couple months of content. Then you like come back to the US, and then like every time you would go back, was it the same, kind of like same school? Like would you run into the same kids, and like they would be like, oh, this kid comes for like a couple of months every year. Like socially, what was it like?
Okay, so actually some more context. After 3rd grade, I went to this school. There's actually 2 public schools there that were very close to each other. So I went to one first after 3rd grade. And I don't know what happened, but I didn't go there again for the second time. So I went to this other one for the next 2 summers. So after the first one, I guess I just didn't go back. But for the second time and the third time, because it was the same school, there were the same people. Like I do remember seeing the same faces the second time around. So I guess that was after 4th and 5th grade at that same school.
Like, did you make friends? Did you like fit in well enough?
I definitely remember making friends and even like connecting with, like I definitely made friends. And the thing is, like when I came back the following year, I would connect with them again, but I only went back twice. So then like after that, we've been out of touch. And this was pre-social media too, right?
Yeah.
I basically don't even think I might have his name because my aunt might hold on to I think my mom or my aunt had the number, but
you can track that person down on Facebook now or something.
Yeah, I guess, but yeah, it's been so long. I don't even know if they would remember.
Did you feel like you were an oddity because you were like this kid that was there from the US?
Mm-hmm.
Was that part of like people's interest in you?
Yeah, I think it was honestly like, I think people were more fascinated to learn about kind of where I came from. Because I could also speak Korean fairly well at the time too. So I can still communicate in Korean. But like, because I'm not like perfectly fluent, like I would have to weave in English words, right? So I'm doing the whole Konglish, the Korean English thing with Koreans because, even I don't know some of these words, right? Like, and I think Koreans in general are already pretty in touch, I think, with American and US culture. Like there's a lot of things they already know about America. I guess it's a firsthand experience, me being there. They get a little taste.
So it's mostly like a positive for them.
I think so.
Did you feel like they thought of you as Korean? Were you like one of them at the same time as you were like this kid who's like fascinatingly grew up in the US?
You know, I don't think I really felt like I wasn't too much of an outsider because I think everyone around did a pretty good job of making me feel included with everything. But at the same time, like I would definitely get, because I think Koreans are also not, maybe this is not just Koreans, right? I think my impression of it is I didn't get that feeling of being an outsider, but you know, there are definitely times when I think it's more the language stuff, right? Like when they say stuff that I don't really know. I think that's more where I feel like left out, but I think that's more on me than how people actually like treat you, right? It's just a language barrier.
Then our conversation shifted toward his parents and how his family navigated language and other barriers in the US. So your parents settling in the US, and it sounds like they spent a lot of time in the Korean community. When they had to interact with like outside of the Korean community or with logistics and kind of navigating like paperwork or other things in the US, the healthcare system, what have you, you know, as a kid, what was your role in kind of supporting them, if any?
Yeah. And I think this is probably an experience shared with many other immigrant children, right? Because the US, you know, system is inherently messy and complicated and paperwork. It's already a complex system. And so I did obviously have to help them a lot, right? Because language being an issue, also just not understanding the US system is also just another issue. And there was like a term that I heard recently. It's like a cultural broker. And I think that's how a lot of immigrants, children of immigrants often act as like cultural brokers.
The term cultural brokering originally referred to anthropological middlemen who negotiated between different cultural groups. But today, it serves as the essential umbrella term for the invisible labor performed by children of immigrants. This includes both the second generation and the 1.5 generation who immigrated as children and often become the primary bridge between two worlds. While language brokering, the literal translation of words, is the most recognizable task, the broader practice of cultural brokering involves navigating the systems and social cues of a new country. This includes procedural brokering, like managing banks or healthcare paperwork, and media brokering, which involves interpreting news or technology. Perhaps the most complex subtype is emotion brokering, where a child manages the vibes or tension during an interaction to protect a parent's dignity or keep the peace. This labor happens regardless of a parent's education level, as even highly educated parents can rely on their children to decode local nuances and complex bureaucracy. Although research suggests that 70 to 90% of immigrant youth engage in cultural brokering, many institutions like hospitals and courts are now limiting child interpreters. This shift aims to ensure medical or legal accuracy and prevent parentification, the psychological stress of a child carrying adult burdens. Ultimately, while it can be a heavy responsibility, brokering is a sophisticated skill that fosters incredible cognitive flexibility, empathy, and maturity.
You know, you go with your parents to the bank, or you go to the parents with your parents to the doctor's office, right? And you're kind of there to be the cultural like translator in a sense, or even direct translator, right? Because sometimes there's things that my parents want to say to whoever, whether it be their doctor or they're talking about insurance, but it just doesn't get communicated properly, right? I think that that can happen. And so I was basically doing that since I was like good enough to speak English. I would be following my mom to the bank or like calling Comcast to try to keep our internet cheap, right? So I was basically doing all of this from a very young age. And I think this is also probably the true for other immigrants, as you know, children of immigrants as well. I think I also got the double whammy of being an only child. So then all of that responsibility kind of gets put on me.
Yeah.
Or even just accessing the health portal, right? Because it requires creating an account and you know all these things. So it's basic navigation, right? And tech navigation too, right? Because I think a lot of folks who are in our parents' generation, right, they do need a little extra support.
Right.
Just tech support's obviously a big one.
How did you feel about that? all those responsibilities when you're growing up?
I mean, obviously, as a kid, you're asking yourself, like, why all your friends and peers are probably like not having to worry about this stuff.
Mm.
But at the same time, like, you're helpful. Also, I'm being the only child, I kind of have no choice. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think maybe as a child, I was like, like, why me? But like, as I got older, it's like, yeah, I mean, this is kind of just how it is. This is how children of immigrants, like, this is a very common experience, right? And I think growing up, because I didn't have a lot of peers in at least grade school, right, that are like going through the same type of home experience as me, it makes you like kind of feel like you're alone in this, but really you hear the stories of other kids and they kind of go through the same things.
And then you, in the high school, you met other people that kind of more similar backgrounds, kind of realized like, oh, this is common.
Yeah. And I think actually looking back, right, I am only thankful for being exposed to those things early. Because I think as another side product of being like, the cultural broker or direct translator for your parents in navigating, these systems, you kind of experience the world a little sooner. And I think you just see the world earlier, if that makes sense. And so you can build on top of, like, as a child, you understand about subscriptions, right? Earlier, you learn about insurance and healthcare and taxes, even like why these things exist. And like, if you're going through it with your parents, right, you have no choice but to understand how it works. And so I think being forced to, I say forced to, right, but like having exposure to that early on has definitely made me more comfortable in navigating my own world as well as I grow older. So I think at the time I was obviously like maybe a little, this is not fun stuff, but it's definitely been helpful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so now for some reflections and then bringing us up to date with where you're at now. So you're a really interesting person for me to interview because a lot of people I've met, and people have like different relationships, people that are, first gen, second gen, third gen immigrants, like people have very different relationships to their identity, cultural identity. And you've spent a lot of time in Korea, even after you moved to the US, but also like in Korean communities in the US, and your language is like very highly proficient. And you've like kind of told me this before that you feel like you're 1.5 gen. I guess like what does that mean to you and what's your relationship to your identity?
Yeah, I think 1.5 gen is defined as not being born maybe in the States, but also living your whole, like most of your life in the US, right? So that's kind of how I define myself as well. I was born in Korea, but then moved to the US and lived my life mostly in the US. Along with that often comes the same like experiences as first gen children, right? Because your parents are also trying to also figure it out, right? Like 1.5 gens are kind of similar in the boat as first gen as you're trying to figure it out, right, in the US. But at the same time, I also benefit from the fact that I have family already here in the US, right? Like my aunt and uncle were already here in the US. And when we moved here, it didn't feel like we're starting completely fresh, right? Like from scratch, because we had a support system. My mom had also lived in the US a little before she had already come here. So it wasn't like a completely new start. And so I think the 1.5 gen story is, I guess I'm trying to say, it's not homogeneous, right? It's very much depending on if you had like family here already, what kind of social structures around to where you move or like wherever you are. Because if you don't have like a Korean church or a big Korean community, it may be harder to find that identity, right? That dual identity to feel you have Korean roots, but you're also American, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with their identity and sometimes don't feel like, some people like in your situation might not feel Korean and also might not feel fully American. But then there's some people that do gravitate towards one or the other, and some people that gravitate and feel like they belong in both and have both identities. How do you feel about your identity?
Yeah, I think I just identify as both because of the fact I've definitely spent most of my time in the US. But, I still have, my family who I speak mostly in Korean with.
Are you comfortable in both settings? Feel like you can be fully yourself?
That's an interesting...
Kind of a different level of the question, yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that question more because there is a difference, I think, depending on the different settings, right? I think in the US, there's definitely more just being, or at least in non-Korean crowds, right? I think there's more directness. Like there's not like in Korean culture, right? There's this thing called nunchi. It's this idea that like you're very aware of your surroundings and like you're careful about what you say and you're aware of what you're saying, right? Before you say it.
And that's like a value. That's like a good thing.
I think it's just like it's like one of those things within Korean communities and Korean like groups. It's definitely being more aware of your interactions and what you say and how you say things. I think in the US, it's just more like you can be free with what you say. And so I have found that like if I'm in a group of older Korean folks, right, my behaviors do adjust a little bit, right? You're more proper. You're speaking in more formal language. Going back to the whole, you have to use the right formal versions. And so, and when I'm in just speaking English, it's very free, right? Like the way I speak is very free. And that's the main thing that I realize. Like it's just the ability to speak more freely, maybe. But identity wise, I do feel comfortable in both settings. So definitely both. But now that I think about it, after you mentioned that question about like, how would you behave differently, maybe in different environments? I think I just feel more comfortable with English speaking environments. I don't think it's just the language, like being more comfortable in the language too. I think there's something culturally different about the two settings.
But when you're in Korea, you don't feel like you don't belong. You feel like you fit in and belong.
First glance, I think I fit in, right? But then when they actually talk to me, I think they realize that something is off. Sometimes there are like slight variations, right? Or if I don't know a simple word, for example, right? Say I don't know a simple word, they might just think that I'm stupid.
Because you don't have like an accent, right? So they're like, oh,
exactly.
Well, it's because you didn't grow up here.
Right. Because I don't have that strong accent, like when I stutter or like can't think of the word, they just look at me like, what do you, and they're also very impatient. So this has happened, right? When I visited 2 years ago. I just remember this ajoshi, this man, I'm trying to buy something. I'm trying to ask him a question. And he's like, what are you trying to say? Like with his hands, right? Like, get it out.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on,
kid. So I distinctly remember those specific instances where I'm like, if only I spoke better, right? I could get away with just feeling more, not feeling like an outsider. If I just knew it better.
Do you feel like you're both, but there's nuance to how comfortable you are depending on the setting and, all this stuff and language and yeah.
Because looks wise, I can get by, but I think it's once I start talking.
But then people treat you like they think that you're from there.
For the most part, yeah.
Next, we find out about the pivotal experience during Willy's childhood that got him into STEM after the break. Hey folks. Last episode, I shared about a new show called History for the Reckoning that I thought you might like. To give you a taste of the show, here's the trailer.
The government doesn't have anywhere to put 98,000 people.
We were literally treated like animals.
American concentration camps, the story of World War II Japanese incarceration. Season 1 of History for the Reckoning, a podcast that dives deep into the history that's hard to hear, but critical to understand.
A congressperson actually said on the floor, "This is the vaguest law I've ever seen."
Unconstitutionally detaining all persons of Japanese ancestry, alien, and what they cleverly called non-alien to avoid acknowledging that they were citizens.
I can't emphasize enough how improvised this was.
No habeas corpus, no nothing. It was so illegal from the beginning.
They sent you down the same barbed wire chutes that they sent the cows and the pigs through.
The searchlights and guard towers were looking in, they weren't looking out.
The American government went to 15 different Latin American countries who said that they would give up their Japanese citizens. The American government paid them to do this.
The only way to combat fear of the other is through empathy.
Through interviews with historians, activists, and people who lived it, we'll cover the history of this stain on America's past, its political and legal implications that resonate today, and learn how the Japanese American community has fought for redress and healing in the decades since. So join me, Spencer Ford, as History for the Reckoning launches on February 19th, 2026.
Now, back to the conversation with Willy. If you want to share a little bit about how you got into STEM, how did you get into STEM?
And I love this question because I've had to think about my educational path a lot, primarily during undergrad, because I helped start the STEM mentorship program for K through 12 students And we specifically worked with high school students. When we tried to build this program, there was a lot of self-reflection, right? When you become an educator, there has to be a lot of self-reflection. And so how did I get into STEM? I think it's a funny story because all throughout elementary school, I was told, like, and it reflected in my grades too. I got like really bad scores in STEM, in science. Like if the score was 1 through 4, 4 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, I got a 1 in science in 6th grade, right? So early on, right? So I was like, oh, I guess I'm bad at math or bad at science, right? Because of this grade that I got. And then I guess middle school rolls around. I had some pretty nerdy friends in middle school. And one of them was like, hey, I'm going to do this thing called Science Olympiad. It's an after school program. You compete in science events. And I was like, I'm not really good at science, but, I like the teacher who's running it and my friend's going to do it. So I was like, okay, let me just try this thing out. And then I end up competing in these competitions on pretty like technical topics. And I realized, hey, maybe I'm not actually that bad at science. So it was really I got a lot of feedback from externalities. And that was like kind of how as a kid, right? Like you get a bad grade, you just think, oh, I'm bad at science, right? I don't think it really goes further than that. So it was really nice to have that confidence, like a little bit after that, to know that, hey, this is not actually that hard. Or like, even if it is hard, there's a way to approach things to make it not as intimidating. And so I think that was really a pivotal moment for me to say, oh, okay, I am actually good at STEM and maybe there's some pathway forward for me, because I was really unsure. And the other thing is my parents didn't know about a lot of career choices other than like being a doctor, a lawyer. The thing is they didn't even know what an engineer really was. It was to that level, right? In terms of like their awareness of the different types of professions out there. And I think if they knew that engineering was a viable path, I think they would have leaned more heavily into it, right? Like putting me into like math classes or coding classes.
So you ended up studying bio, right?
Right. Part of that was also, I was interested in health. I think being pre-med is really great because it keeps you like at least on top of things, right? Like you're doing a lot of things that give you options afterwards. You're taking a lot of extra classes. I think I'm maybe veering too far off the original thing, but yeah, I think my parents just really didn't know what was out there. And so a lot of it was like subtly hinting like, hey, there's things in the health professions, right? Because my family on the East Coast, a lot of them are in healthcare. And so my mom has seen, other family members be able to find stability and success in these fields. And so I think part of it was like, there were subtle nudges throughout my life pushing me in the bio direction, which is fine because I love bio. But at the same time, I think there's just so many, I do really enjoy like the engineering and math side of things. Those are some of the things that I picked up later on. I think YouTube was a huge thing too. YouTube is undeniably a huge part of my educational experience. And I have to say, actually, I learned maybe 50% of, there's so many random things you learn from the internet, right? There's a lot of great producers who make really good science videos. And when I was growing up, I pretty much watched almost exclusively science videos.
Wow. Okay. So once you figured out that you weren't bad at STEM, you kind of just got more and more into it because that's where your interests were.
I love learning. I think it was like a combination of just learning new things. And I think YouTube and people who make YouTube videos, it's just so much more engaging than teachers, like traditional teaching, right? Because it's short usually. It's very much applications. It's always there's a catchphrase and a title and that grabs your attention, right? To begin with. I think that format was very helpful for me just to be engaged and see how the other people were passionate about, in this space. The high school was really good that I went to. Everyone was like, their parents were all like very well educated and for the most part, and everyone was very much like college bound. I think elementary and like middle school, being a nerd was not cool. And so I think it was cool to see other people really passionate about science, like on the internet. And I think I found a little like, I don't want to say like community because I'm obviously just watching a video, but like there was definitely a feeling of like, oh yeah, it's not just me. I'm not the only one like super passionate about this stuff.
I'm really glad your friend invited you to Science Olympiad because like if you hadn't gotten that confidence, you hadn't gotten that validation, like maybe you wouldn't be on this trajectory where like you are in your late 20s at a job that you love. It's really lucky.
And I think confidence early on is like key, right? Like building that confidence early on. And I truly believe everyone can understand science, right? And math. It just needs to be explained in a digestible way, in an engaging way, right?
So I had like a really hard time with chemistry in high school because of, I don't know, I had a hard time with the teacher. I had a hard time with the class. And like then I just kind of like wrote off chemistry. And same happened with physics. And I just like wrote it off because it was just that one class. But like, really, I've never had like other exposure to chemistry or physics. And it's crazy, like how extremely, like how much of what I think my chemistry and physics ability is, it was just all based on like those two classes. But the crazy thing is like, I loved bio. I had a really great first bio teacher, but then my second bio teacher was complete crap. Like I would like go up to him after class and be like, this was incorrect in my, like you graded me wrong. I need this point back. And like, you did this thing wrong in the class, whatever. I was just like a really pain in the butt student. And then he like loved me, he laughed, he like loved me, give me extra points. And I was like, no, you have to give everyone extra points for this thing that you graded wrong. And he was like, no, no one else caught it. But like, I was so angry during that class, but I like had that first foundation of a bio class that I knew I loved. So then I didn't like write off bio because of this teacher.
Yeah. It's really easy to write it off early, right? And that's the danger, right? It's like having teachers that also like push students down early on. That's also like, that should never happen.
Yeah. Okay. Before we wrap up, Willy, what are you up to these days? Where are you in life? What are you up to? Catch us up.
So I'm currently working at Emory. We're working on some pretty cool stuff at our research lab, really cutting edge developments in this world of imaging and AI. So exciting stuff happening at work.
Biomedical research.
Not sure what's happening next. The next steps of my life are to be determined, but looking forward to it.
What do you do for fun?
Nowadays, it's been a lot of coding. I'm not a coder, but a lot of these new tools that have been coming out make the barrier to doing your own projects to be a lot easier. And so as someone who comes from a biology background, it's just really cool to see the different things that are possible now to do without the formal training as like a software engineer. Just trying out new things and learning some new skills. Has been what's
very
been
cool.
Taking up a lot of my nights.
That's a very productive. It also seems like a very like cognitive heavy thing to do after work. And your guys' work seems pretty cognitive heavy. So I'm impressed. You must be eating a lot of protein.
So have you heard the term vibe coding?
No.
So
well, kind of. I don't know what it means. What does it mean?
It's literally this term that's being used by software engineers now because you don't need to actually type code, real code anymore. That's why people saying software engineering jobs are going to get wiped out is because now you just say with words what you want instead of actually making sure the formatting and all your code is correct. You just say, I want this function to now search for all X words. So you just say what you want and it'll make it for you. So I guess my point is it doesn't take a whole lot of brain power because you're now just vibe coding because it's just...
Okay, so it's not that tiring after work. Okay.
It's based off vibes. So you just say what you want and then it does all the coding. And that's why, and you can make your own websites, your own from scratch, right? These AIs can just do everything from scratch. For your business, you want to create a website or anything, you name it, it can just make.
Whoa. Okay. Wild. Yeah. So that's what you've been into. Okay. Very cool. Okay. Last question, because I know you have to go. And you've kind of shared some phrases or some terms, but like as you were growing up, was there a saying or some sayings that you heard a lot growing up? What comes to mind?
There's a lot of sayings, I think.
Okay, share a few.
I think by far the most common one that I still hear today is 밥 먹었어?
Uh-huh.
Which is just have you eaten?
Uh-huh.
So I think even when I talk to my mom or my dad, it's just have you eaten? It's like one of the first things that comes up, right? Because they just want to make sure that you've been fed, that you're not going hungry. I find that just so, I don't know if it's funny, but it almost seems like a very typical Korean thing, mom kind of thing, auntie kind of thing.
What do you think it means to her when she's asking you that?
Probably just checking in, right? Like, yeah, just another way of kindly asking, how are you doing? That's kind of how I kind of see it. I guess as a child, though, my mom's definitely just straight up asking, hey, are you hungry? Like, did you eat?
Mm-hmm.
But
it's actually just like for that information. Yes.
But nowadays it's more like a way to just check in.
What's another one?
This one's like about marriage. It's like you pray once before going to war, but you have to pray twice before you get married.
Oh, so is it a Korean one?
I don't know if it's a Korean one, but it's one that my mom has said. She says it in Korean, but I just translated it. So it's like 전쟁할 때는 기도 한 번 하라. So you pray once when you go to war. 근데 결혼할 때는 2번 기도해야 돼. So meaning you have to pray twice before you get married.
This proverb is originally a Russian folk saying. When you go to war, pray once. When you go to sea, pray twice. And when you go to marry, 3 times. It gained massive popularity in South Korea during the 1990s and 2000s, as relationship experts and divorce lawyers used it to emphasize emotional preparation over material wedding planning. In modern Korean culture, the middle reference to sea is often dropped to create a sharper, more direct contrast between the risks of war and the challenges of marriage. That's come up a lot, just reminding you to be careful who you partner with?
Pretty much.
I like that one. That one's very colorful and descriptive. Thanks for sharing. I like that one is like very everyday. And I think that's like, I've heard the have you eaten thing in like kind of a lot of cultures. It's like a certain kind of love language of like, you know, not only like how are you doing, but like, are you okay? Right? Like you're doing okay. And yeah, Ruben's parents, they like to ask that usually pretty early in any phone conversation. And then my parents ask that sometimes too. And sometimes now I ask them that because I'm just curious what they ate because they eat a lot of delicious things over there in LA. I'm just like, okay, but I ask like, wait, what did you guys eat? Willy, thanks so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was a cool experience. Thanks again for having me on.
That was the second half of my conversation with Willy. His story shows us what it's like to be a 1.5 generation immigrant, simultaneously living in 2 worlds, inhabiting 2 cultures, and navigating 2 identities. It's a nuanced reality where the challenges and benefits are often 2 sides of the same coin. Next week, I'll have a new guest on. Remember to subscribe or follow so you don't miss that, or the bonus episodes as they drop. If you're enjoying Season 3, please consider becoming a supporter. In a time when diversity content is endangered, your support helps me keep featuring these beautiful global neighbors and their important, underrepresented perspectives. This week, I want to give a special thanks to founding supporters Benita and Guy, Asher, and Nate. Your support means the world. Thank you for making this social impact storytelling possible. You too can support this mission. Join Season 3 supporters via the link in the show notes and contribute today. The video version of this episode and ways to connect with Willy are also in the show notes. This episode was produced and edited by me, with advising and executive production support from Ruben Yana Ruben. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Jess Lynn. Take care of yourself and your neighbors, and I'll see you soon.